wanted to record this. So I was like, oh, okay, got it. So, all right, so we are recording, and let's continue. So we're just gonna go forward now. Okay, I think we're recording. Let me just see if we.
Yeah, it shows on
It
the
shows?
screen recording.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay. So things that we do at the Counseling Center are here. Victoria just covered what the Women's Resource Center offers, and let's get into the workshop. So what we're going to talk about today are these things. We don't have to cover everyone specifically in the interest of time, but we already spoke about what we do at the Counseling Center. We're basically going to help you identify one characteristic of unhealthy relationships, a characteristic of a positive relationship, and how to set healthy boundaries. Okay, these are hopefully the things that we talk about today. Okay, so Victoria.
Yes, we usually have this group activity at the beginning, but since we're pretty intimate small group, which is great sometimes, let's do this kind of together as a bigger group of 9 participants. And I'm gonna give you this question, and if you can participate either in chat or open your mic and provide your answer. No wrong or right answer, is just like your contribution. So the question is, what do you need in relationships in order to succeed in college? So now you students at BMCC, maybe first semester, second, third. So what would you like to see in your relationships that you have in your life in order for you to succeed in college? What would you say?
So you can type it in the chat, or if you want to say it out loud, it's up to you. You can just unmute yourselves. Let's have a conversation. What do you think you need? Yes, better communication. Absolutely.
Better communication.
Good answer.
Consistency.
Support to get the work done that's needed.
Yes. Great answers. Anyone else?
Positive encouragement.
Less defensiveness from Dawn in the chat. That's a big one. Less defensiveness.
Positive encouragement, Gabrielle said. Yep, absolutely. Okay, great. Anything else anyone want to add before I go back to sharing? No? Okay, cool. Very good. So let's keep going then. So, okay.
So now, all the answers that you provided, they actually the right answers, because all those things actually speak to, you will see as we move through the presentation, to a healthy relationship. But before going to the healthy part, we're going to speak what is unhealthy. And in a way, with that question, we already kind of set our expectation or our desire. What do we want to see in a relationship in order to be successful in college? And as a point of clarification, in this presentation, when we speak about relationships, we don't necessarily refer only to the romantic ones, or where we have like a partner or boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. We also refer to relationship beyond those like boundaries, the relationship with our parents, relationship with our friends, or even roommates, somebody that is part of our life that we have a connection with, that impacts our well-being, impacts our success in school, in college. So it's whatever information we hear today, think about all those relationships, not just the romantic one. So in terms of the unhealthy relationship, we'll be talking a little bit about coercion, threats, emotional abuse, intimidation, isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming. These are, in a way, traits, features, and characteristics of an unhealthy relationship. And the goal is for you to be able to, in a way, recognize them if they're happening in any of your relationships, the relationship with parents, relationship with friends, relationship with partners, and to see how you can either rectify, if there's a way to rectify, or maybe end the relationship if those things are still happening, and there's no need to continue a relationship that is full of those unhealthy aspects, I'll say. So when we think about coercion or threats, it's something that we can use very easy, but sometimes it's not that easy to recognize in our relationships because once again, we join the relationships with something positive in mind, right? Nobody joins a relationship, especially a romantic one, saying, "Oh, I want to be abused in that relationship," or "I want to have fights every day. That's why let's start a relationship or let's start a friendship," right? We all get into relationships, friendships thinking positively. I like this person. I want to spend time with them. I want to have memories, create memories with them. But then reality kicks in, and then things happening. So when we say that there is coercion of threats in relationships, we basically refer to when a partner or somebody else that you're in relationship with threatens to hurt themselves or hurt you in case you leave or in case you continue to fight or have arguments, threatening to leave you, and making physical threats also, like I will punch you or I'll beat you or I will do anything else physically in order to make you not express your opinion or not to express what you disagreements, what you don't like in relationship or what you like. So that's how basically coercion and threats are working. They will use those instruments to get what they want, and we're going to get to that part, but I can disclose it now. Basically, is control, especially when we speak about the romantic relationship, but even friendships, even friends do that to kind of each other, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, that we try to control that person, to control the relationship, the situation. And oftentimes we engage with this type of tools of threatening, saying, "Oh, if you don't buy me this Valentine's Day gift, then I'm gonna not cook for you tonight, or we're not gonna spend the time together or watch the movie together," right? So it might feel like, oh, it's cute and nice, but it's actually it's a threat, and it's a coercive mechanism to unmask that behavior. Guess we can go to the next one.
Sure.
Thank you, Robert.
Mm-hmm.
Intimidation. So how the intimidation part actually works. Oftentimes confiscating your personal property, or even if you share a pet, or some other things together, or if you live together and maybe you made an arrangement that one of you is paying rent, or even with your roommate, they will say, "Oh, you can't live here anymore starting today. Pack your bags and leave," or something like that, right? Abusing, once again, pets, if you share them together, or silence. Or overrating, or maybe you've heard about this expression, giving you the silent treatment, right? Especially when you had like maybe an argument and then you still want to continue the conversation with your roommate, partner, friend, and they say, "No, I don't want to talk anymore," or you ask them something and they silent, they don't say anything, right? That's another sign and behavior that shows that the person in question is kind of try to control the narrative, the situation, and try to have it accordingly to their schedule. And instead of trying to maybe have it like a balance, okay, we both, I don't know, fired up, but now let's come and sit down and speak. The other person is just like, "No, I don't want to speak. I'm going to speak only on my terms," right? And giving them, the other party giving them the silent treatment. Okay, we can go to the next part, emotional abuse. And this is a big one, because I also kind of noticed an interesting, I would say, phenomenon. I believe and this is just a personal observation, I didn't really conduct the research to have the data back, but if I will take the generation of my parents, my mom is like 59, so she was in an abusive relationship with my father, and I think like growing up, my generation's children, some of us grew up with abusive parents towards each other, fathers or mothers, and it was a lot of physical abuse. And for many years, in the field of trying to improve relationships and combating domestic violence, would speak a lot about physical abuse. And physical abuse is very like visible, right? If somebody hurts you physically, you either will have a bruise or it will be visible. But with years, due to the work that we've done in this field, it's changed. And I think generations also grew, younger people grew, and they're not so eager if they don't understand, like starting punching each other. But we got into an area of emotional abuse that is very hard to recognize. And it's very hard to like point out the way it was with the physical abuse, right? Once again, physical abuse is very visible. Emotional abuse is not visible. It's not like you have a bruise on your forehead and that speaks for your emotional abuse. So it's very hard to identify and even recognize for yourself, because it's very well also blended with love and romance, and it's very also normalized in our society. If you think about movies or songs or influencers or maybe expressions that you grew up maybe in different cultures, they normalize violence, even saying if your husband and your wife is not jealous, it means they don't love you, right? So jealousy even is like romanticized, like if your partner is jealous, then that's a good sign that they love you. But a little bit in short, is to give examples and kind of definition of emotional abuse, would say that making your partner feel bad about themselves, calling them names, playing mind games, and referring to Gabrielle's contribution in the chat, gaslighting, interrogating them, like where you been, who you spend time with, who is this friend, who is the other friend, and checking on their activities and their whereabouts. Now you're all students at BMCC, and we do Zooms or even in person. But let's imagine this situation: if your partners or even your friends start texting you 50, 100 messages per day while you're in class, do you think that is a good act on their behalf, is a sign of their love, or would you perceive it as something unhealthy? If they send you 100 text messages per day while you in class at BMCC, what would you say? You can put it in the chat. You can open your mic.
So what do you
100
think?
messages.
Victoria is asking a question. If your partner sent you 100 text messages in one day, how would you receive that? How would you, what would you think about that? Anyone?
Is it a sign of love? Is it
It would be.
I'll turn off my phone. And Nana said unhealthy. Don said I would turn off my phone.
It would be overwhelming. And they're in such a bad place that they need to be in control, know where the other person is all the time. They have a lack of trust, not just in the other person, but in themselves first.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you all for your.
They can't trust anybody else.
Thank you for your contributions. That's definitely and that's the part with the emotional abuse, right? Because if we say, what if they send only 10 text messages a day? Is 10 better than 100? Like if we focusing only on the number, of course, it's also the quality of those messages, what they're saying in those messages. So it has to be in a way a balance, and of course, very much depends on the context. If it's like a conversation back and forth, most probably we exchange like 100 messages days between two of us. But if it's just like one person keep bombarding you with messages, especially if you told them, I'm in school, I'm in class, I have class from 9 to 3 p.m. I'm not going to be able to respond, I'm not very available, and the other person, they still bombard you with messages, then that's definitely a issue, something that you definitely should address with that person who is doing that, friend or partner or even parents. If your parents keep asking you where you're going, what are you doing, at one point you have to have a conversation with them and tell them, Mom, Dad, I'm in school. I'm from 9 a.m. to 3 a.m. in school. I'm busy with classes. I don't have time to be back and forth with a lot of messages. I have a break, and when I have a break, I might contact you, or that's the time when we can talk to each other, right? So it very much depends on the context, and it has to be a balance, because if it becomes, like some of you mentioned, overwhelmed, then definitely it's a sign that there should be a discussion, at least, if not more than that. Okay, we can go to the next one. Isolation. This is also a big one, especially in even in our context of the United States. A lot of us moving to this country. We are immigrants, moving here as adults or younger adults, and especially moving here as an adult. It's not easy, or your family is not immediately coming with you, and oftentimes some of us end up being here by themselves as adults, parents living abroad, relatives still living abroad, and then you end up in a relationship, and then that person or that friendship, that friend becomes the main contact or the main kind of support even in the United States. And what they start telling you, oh, you can't speak with your parents every day, or you can go see your friends every day, or on Sundays you can go to church. Isolation can go very well with also the religion part of like, oh, if people have a different religions or not necessarily or different perspectives, they might say, oh, it's starting today, or if you want to be together with me, you can't practice your religion, or you can't go to this church. You have to start going somewhere else and stuff like that. So basically controlling once again your partner or your friend or somebody else. And isolation can be once again physically, like actually not letting you go nowhere, locking the door, or making you being not able to leave the space. And also it can be emotionally, like telling you who to talk, who not to talk, when to talk to them, and then using sentences or phrases like, but I'm the main person for you. Why do you need this too many friends? You can talk to me, you can spend time to me. Why do you need to go for coffee with your friends? I'm your world. I'm there to provide you stuff. And if you like tell them, oh, I think this is a little bit overwhelming, you might hear expressions, but I love you. I want to be with you. I'm your best friend. I want to spend time with you. So you don't want to spend time with me. So like using in a way play game minds, as we explained above, to play this type of tricks, and use jealousy once again to normalize it, to say that that's how it should be in our romantic relationship. Okay, we can go to the next one. I think we have a few more students who join us. Thank you all for joining. We already started, but no worries. We're discussing about the unhealthy aspects, characteristics of a relationship before we go to the better part of healthy ones. So feel free to contribute in the chat, or open your mic whenever we have a little conversation. And we're also taking attendance. Robert and myself, we just shared the link, so make sure to fill it out while you're in the Zoom room. Okay, another aspect of an unhealthy relationship is minimizing, denying, blaming. So that refers to making light of your feelings, denying any concerns that you might raise, or blaming you for their actions. Or you got me angry, that's why I screamed. Instead of taking accountability and saying, I'm sorry, I could respond differently, they can say, no, you the reason that I got angry and I screamed. Or that the minimizing part also has a gender aspect to it, the gender stereotype, because often in heterosexual relationships, not sure how it's happening that in homosexual relationships. If somebody has that experience and you'd like to share, please do that. But often in hetero relationships, it will be like, oh, you woman, you're too emotional. Women always cry and exaggerate. All the women do that. I can't talk to you because you're a woman, right? This gender component also comes with minimizing the feelings, and instead of just sitting down and having the conversation, they are dismissive by just like, oh, you're a woman, you're too emotional. Or women do to men reverse, or you're a man, you're not capable of listening or understanding my feelings. You can't understand me, right? Being dismissive on the other side, because once again, women and men, regardless of our gender identity, we all can be either the perpetrators or the victims or survivors of an abusive relationship. So I know statistically men still dominate those numbers in terms of being identified as perpetrators or abusers, but it doesn't mean that women are doing it, or we by some special case we always the victims. the abuse doesn't have a gender, it doesn't have a class, doesn't have a race. It happens in all the relationships. It's how we talk about it and who actually makes it visible and who doesn't make it visible. But once again, we all both can play those roles. um, I see some contributions in the chat, also being heard, acknowledged, right? Minimizing feelings correctly. Jealousy is not love or proof of love, right? But it's a very cultural and tricky thing with jealousy, because if you look at the movies, every time, maybe after this workshop, maybe we all manage to kind of open your eyes a little bit and look at even movies that we have nowadays, but older, maybe from the 80s, 90s. We have a lot of normalizing happening in those movies with jealousy. Oh, you didn't call me enough times, it means that you don't love me. Or you didn't give me this, or you didn't bring me this. Or as a woman you have to do this, or as a man you have to do that in order to prove my love. And today is Valentine's Day, so happy all with the Valentine's Day with love, regardless of the status of relationships in our lives. But if you go on Netflix even and watch some movies for Valentine's Day, you're gonna see a lot of normalizing jealousy there, and normalizing a lot of like gender roles, who's supposed to do what, and little unhealthy things that are happening in the relationship, but we still kind of normalize and try to make yeah, that's what love is about. Arguing, kind of screaming and being over the top, dramatic, and all this kind of stuff. And drama, it's not bad in itself, but once again, is it something that we really both manage to do that, express our feelings, or it's a very like based on name calling, based on minimizing the partner's feeling, based on threatening them or making them feel like they don't matter. It's drama about control and power, or it's about clarifying certain things that maybe don't go that well in that relationship. So when it comes to any type of abuse, because there are different forms of abuse, but any characteristic of an unhealthy relationship, it's based on power and control. And we have a wheel here that kind of shows how power and control works. It's in a way also like a cycle, and that's why also when we speak about abuse in particular, we say that it has 4 or 3 phases: the honeymoon phase, the tension rising, and then actually the abuse happening. So when it comes to the wheel, idea is the power and control are in the middle, and all those characteristics that we described, the perpetrator will use in order to maintain power and control. They will use intimidation, they will use emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing, using children or pets, using privilege in their relationship, using economic abuse, or physical abuse, sexual, religious abuse, only to maintain power and control. So that's any form of abuse, any form of unhealthy relationship is all about power and control. Who wants to be in control and basically have the last things to say about that relationship? And once again, this can apply very well to friendships as well, relationship with our friends and even our parents. So it's not exclusive only to the romantic partners. And I'll stop here and I'll give the chance to Robert to take the floor and walk us through the healthy part of relationships.
Sure. So Gabrielle shared a question in the chat, and we'll talk about it. I want to make sure that you recognize that we see your question, and I'll wait until the end to answer it, and also let Victoria to see it and digest it and have a response to it. Is that okay?
Yes. That's okay with me, and we'll definitely come back to you, Gabrielle.
And I just realized, is it Gabrielle or Gabrielle? Because I noticed your name, you misspelled it, but it's Gabrielle, right? Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I'm like, people have different names. I realize it's probably a typo, but I was like, just in case. Okay, Gabrielle, perfect. Okay. So yeah, great question, right? Great question. And I think, as you see, we talk about the healthy relationships now, right? It may not even be the right question, right? Because maybe the answer to the question is not having to convince somebody, perhaps, right? So I'll kind of leave that there as an interesting thought to your question, right? So healthy relationships, thank you, Victoria, for that very informative discussion on unhealthy. Let's look at some positive sides of this, since it is Valentine's Day and you did mention love, and you have me feeling very sad, Victoria. Just kidding. Right? See, look, that's me. Like, that's an example of right, projecting your own feelings. See, that was not even good. I'm joking, but see that? Right? You didn't do anything. You're just telling us, right? So
I just said it's Valentine's Day, so now
right.
you tell me that made you sad.
Right. Look, see, I'm gaslighting you. You see, that's how it works, right? It's like, oh, look, you made me feel this way, right? And I'm catching it kind of as a joke, but that's kind of how it happens, right? So part of healthy relationships is like recognizing your own feelings and emotions and not projecting them on others, not exhibiting non-threatening behavior, right? Not exhibiting non-threatening behavior. Not exhibiting threatening behavior. What I mean to say, showing trust and support, other things like we have here, right? Accountability, open communication, respect, honesty, taking responsibility for yourself, right? So let's look at what non-threatening behavior is. I'm just going to kind of fly through these so we have time for discussion. So non-threatening behavior is talking and acting so your partner feels safe and comfortable doing and saying things, right? So it's doing something that your partner, reacting in a way that your partner feels comfortable to talk about all their feelings, right? Not just the ones that you want to hear. Okay? Respect, equally important, is listening non-judgmentally, being emotionally affirming and understanding and valuing opinions, right? So being emotionally affirming means that, it's this concept of empathy, right? That you don't have to necessarily feel what your partner's feeling, but if it means something to them, then if you're in this relationship, right, one way you can show respect is by being supportive of those emotions. Even if you disagree or you don't think, obviously the way to not show respect is to say something like, oh, why would you be so upset about that? Like, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't even be so upset about that. That is definitely not showing respect, right? That's minimizing and doing the things that Victoria mentioned. Okay. Valuing other people's opinions, even if they differ from your own, is another form of showing respect. Okay. All right. Okay. Moving on, healthy relationships also involve trust and support. So trust means having confidence in your partners and in your partner and feeling physically, emotionally safe, supporting your partner's life goals, right? Oops, sorry. My wheel went back. Supporting your partner's life goals and respecting your partner's right to his or her own feelings, friends, activities, and opinions, right? I think this is a big one. I spend a lot of time on this slide because I think that trust and support often, have a different idea, right? And Dawn, to your point, right? We all have different opinions as to what people think listening and engaging is, right? So absolutely, going back, that was from the last slide, I'm sure, but support also goes along with that, because support means that, sometimes in every relationship, there's going to be conflict, whether it's a relationship with your friends, whether it's a relationship with your teacher, whether it's a relationship with your intimate partner, right? But the idea is that despite that conflict, right, can you keep your relationship goals? Can you keep your overall goals in that relationship kind of in your mind, right? And will that person support you, and will you support them, right? And so, okay, we might disagree about this one thing right now, but if our goal is to kind of make this relationship work long term, then how can we support each other to do that, right? I know I'm being kind of vague, but that's what real support means, right? And trust, kind of means having this confidence that, okay, you don't have to worry about these questions. Trust is another movie that comes up, oftentimes in movies as well, like Victoria always mentioned, right? This idea of like, oh, how do you know? There's always this question, right? I hate this. It's in social media all the time. It's always like, how do you know, right? ... It's always like, and the question is like, what do you mean? It's maybe you don't need to know, maybe because you trust. So that's how, it's always like, how do you know your partner's not doing this, right? Or, there's always these like social media posts that try to plant doubt in your mind. Like, oh, if your partner's too quiet about this, maybe it means they're like secretly having an affair or something like that, right? And it's like, exactly, those generalizations. So it's very easy to say, my partner does these things, and then the seeds of doubt start coming, and then it's like, but you know, if the answer is, you know, in your mind that you trust the person and because you don't have a reason to, then that should be good enough for you, right? You don't need proof, you know, because that line of thinking, the how do you know, will lead to the controlling behavior that Victoria mentioned. It will lead to the 100 text messages. Wait, are you really at Target? Are you really, you've been gone for an hour. You said you were going to be gone for 20 minutes. Are you, and it can lead to that kind of self-doubt leads to you projecting those feelings onto your partner, right? So a lot of healthy relationships involves yourself. It involves putting yourself in check and making sure that you're not projecting your emotions. Kind of as I joked with Victoria saying, oh, you're making me feel bad by talking about negative things. No, right? You're not making me feel bad. This is what we're here to talk about. If I feel bad, then it's because I care about the topic as well. And I own that, right? And so that also goes along with what we're talking about in terms of, you know, being accountable, right? So let's move to honesty though. I'm jumping around a little bit. So honesty means not making excuses for your own actions or partner's actions, being honest about your feelings, which I kind of described, and keeping your word and, you know, not lying to cancel plans. I know, Gabrielle, you mentioned ghosting, right? Well, healthy relationships involve not ghosting, right? And if you feel like you have to convince your partner, then I'm not trying to be dramatic, but then the question is, right, is that person compatible with you, right? And so I always say that, you know, good, healthy relationships are sort of not just about this romantic face-to-face kind of exchange, you know, like you see in the movies, like, oh, I'm so enamored by you. You're so beautiful. You're so amazing. But more like, hey, come here. Like, what's our goals? Let's look down this way. Stand next to me and let's look down the road and let's see what our goals are, right? If we share the same goals and we share the same vision for our future, then that means we're compatible. That means that ghosting hopefully would be less. It wouldn't happen as much, you know? But if you're like this, it may be challenging at times. Please jump in, Gabrielle. Join, say something. You're on mute.
And where do you give somebody the space to respond in their own time? And where's that line where this is ghosting, they're ignoring?
Yes.
They might not think it's abusive.
Yeah.
But I might not think it is, but I know it is because I've given them time, the space to deal with themselves and whatever it is they're going. And the pattern's repeating. And then when you kind of talk about it, they don't recognize it and say, well, it's all you.
Yep. And we're going to talk about that when we get to boundaries, because that's exactly what you're alluding to, is about how do you set those healthy boundaries for yourself, right? Because remember, at the end of the day, people are going to do what they think. People have all kinds of reasons, you know, just from a counseling perspective, people have all kinds of reasons as to why they do things. You know, some, and I'm not saying they're good reasons or they're helpful to us, but there's reasons, right? Somebody who hurts someone else could have a reason. It doesn't mean it's a good reason, but there's a reason, you know, like somebody scamming someone or robbing someone either. There could be a reason. I'm not condoning that. Don't hear that the wrong way. But whether or not that reason is good enough for us has to do with how we kind of take charge of that situation, take the control back and say, you know what, this feels like gaslighting, and recognizing your own self and honoring yourself and valuing that decision and saying, I can't do it anymore. Like, so, okay, you say you need time. Hey, take all the time you need, but I can't stick around for that because ultimately I'm only hurting myself. You know, I'm only like making myself feel, you know, more unhappy. So not to kind of directly
do that with family. I mean, many times it's your family,
sure,
or those of us that might have kids.
Yes, and the healthy boundaries and setting limits works the same way. You know, because at some point you have to limit your expectations of what you think you're going to get from that person. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you'll continuously be kind of disappointed, right? If you expect that things are going to turn out differently. So, but again, it's more complicated than that. I just kind of wanted to give you some sort of obvious like response. Obviously, there's no one size fits all to any of this. So please take what we say as guidance, right? But not like absolute fact. But thank you for exactly.
In a ballpark.
Exactly. But thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. So just in the interest of time, we talked a lot about this stuff already. I want to get to the boundary stuff because I think it's important. You know, a lot of times people don't communicate openly because they don't feel safe to, they're afraid of the reaction, right? Or they're harboring their own resentment. And so again, it comes back to you. If you have to really ask yourself why you feel like you can't be open about what you're communicating to your partner, and then maybe at me or your family members or your professors as well. Victoria, you want to jump in? You want to say something?
Yes, I think when it comes to open communication, it's also very important to acknowledge that we as individuals have been like socialized to make a lot of assumptions. And once again, through the movies and other media outlets, or even celebrities or magazines, or even in our own families, that like often we hear, but you're supposed to know. You're supposed to know what I like. You're supposed to know what I think. Not really, because I don't know. I didn't meet no person who can read my mind yet. Like, right? My partner, they can't know all the time what's going through my head if I'm not making that clear to them, if I'm not communicating open with them. So we tend to make a lot of assumptions. Oh, he didn't call me, it means this. Or he said that, it means that. Instead of just asking questions for clarifications, or just let's sit down and have this conversation about it. What do you mean when you said this? Or what this means to you? Or what trust means to you? Or how loyalty looks to you? What is that important to you? Is not important? Instead of just assuming those things, that this is important for them, this is not important for them, it's better to have that conversations and keep those conversations always open and going. And if there are some issues, instead of just like getting upset and playing this passive aggressive game, or I'm not talking to you because upset me, but I don't know why I upset you. Like, what happened? Just come to me and tell me. If I did something that upset you, tell me. I will listen. I'll acknowledge my mistake, and we'll have a conversation, move forward. But if we're not saying those things and we wait for our partners or our friends to read our mind, to understand how they upset us, then it might take some years, or it might take some weeks, or it might take some months. So when it comes to open communication, it's important to be as clear as possible, keep it always going, and speak our mind, not try to avoid making assumptions.
Mhm. Thank you, Victoria. Absolutely. And so along with that, again, just goes on to your accountability. I kind of mentioned this already, kind of knowing what your triggers are, right? Knowing what has come from you. Again, it's not about blame, but it's just about, again, we can only expect the best from others if we try ourselves to be our best. And there's no such thing as perfection. We're all humans, we're all works in progress, right? So this idea of acknowledging past experience, admitting being wrong, right, when it's appropriate, and changing your behavior, right? A lot of times people say, to your point, Gabrielle, we fall into this, well, that's just the way I am, right? And that's fine, right? But it may not work for you. So I may say, well, hey, this is how I am, but it doesn't mean that you have to stay with me either, like that kind of thing, and vice versa, right? So part of accountability. Okay. Also, so this goes to the positive side of the opposite of the power and control wheel, which is called the equality wheel. And again, it's just kind of the things that we talked about, honestly, and we'll, included, which we didn't talk about, is physical affection, right? So everyone's love language is different. Some people are more verbal. Some people show through acts of service, through kindness, through physical affection and intimacy. It kind of, you just kind of have to know kind of the person you're with, as well as like within your families as well, like the kind of how people show affection. And some families are more affectionate to their children, some families are not. But again, there's no right answers. It's just kind of knowing, where that goes. All right. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving very quickly. Victoria, we have about 5 minutes left. And I do have another meeting to attend, just to kind of put that out there. How do you think we should proceed? Do you want to share the slides, or should we?
We can share them as we speak, but I can definitely stay longer if students are available, since we started also like 10,
Okay.
almost 10 minutes after. So if you have to leave, that's fine, but I'm available to stay longer if students that kind of also just joined us, we can stay longer. Yeah, let's keep this and we'll keep talking through them.
Okay, but I'm sharing the slideshow. So do you want to take over, or do you want to just kind of talk about this on your own without the slides? What do you think?
Yeah, let's keep the slides for now, and when you leave, we can talk freely without the slides. We can have that part of the conversation with the audience as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead. I don't want to take up your time. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No worries, it's fine. It's natural, it's life. You see how we do the logistics too. Okay, exactly. When it comes to healthy boundaries, once again, most probably in the last few years, outside school, when in school, we heard a lot of like healthy boundaries, people trying to establish boundaries in their life, in their relationships. Um, so a few elements to kind of guide you when you ever think about healthy boundaries. Identify your limits. So with boundaries, one thing that is very important for us to realize, we have to know ourselves very well. Like to Robert's point that he made a few times, if we don't know our past, if we don't know what we like or what we don't like, we're not going to be able to establish healthy boundaries. We not might even understand the concept of boundaries because we don't know ourselves. We don't know what limits are. We don't know what makes us angry, what it doesn't make angry. And that's fine because oftentimes we discover ourselves as humans as we live. And to know ourselves, it takes time. It's one thing to know yourself when you're 18, another thing to know yourself when you're 30, another thing when you're 50, when you're 60, and so on. So it comes with life experience as well, right? We need to live lives in order to kind of get to know ourselves. But also it's important to do some reflection on ourselves, especially after few experiences, after 2 or 3 relationships, and like identifying in a way maybe a pattern that we engage with. Well, I had 2 relationships, and in both relationships, I noticed that I would get very angry very quickly and be a firecracker and do this and that. Maybe that's something that I should change on my own instead of like putting that blame on my partners and always saying that they are the ones that provoked me or the ones who started the fight and stuff like that. So identifying our own limits is one key aspect in understanding what we like, what we don't like, how much we can accept and tolerate in a relationship. Can we accept if our partner shares with us and say, I'm interested in being polyamorous, or I'm interested in keeping relationships with the opposite sex or same sex as friends? Are you comfortable if your partner has 3, 4, 5 other women who are the friends and they meet and spend time together and stuff like that? You gotta know your limits and what you're comfortable with and what, and be honest at the beginning of the relationship or in a way as soon as possible. So don't wait years and years to like say, oh, but I never wanted that, I never signed up for that, right? Another aspect of healthy boundaries is to be direct. Once again, open communication. Don't expect that somebody read your mind or that you can read somebody's mind. Ask questions. We never should be afraid of asking questions and having conversations. Some conversation might not be very comfortable, but with discomfort, we also grow. If those conversations are honest and they're open, even though we might feel discomfort at the moment when we have them, but with a few reflection or a bit of reflection afterwards, you come to a conclusion that it's good that you had that conversation. At least you know what you're dealing with. You know your partner, what they expect, what they want, and you can make a decision for yourself. Do you want to engage with that relationship or no, or what do you want to change? Because it's okay to say no. It's okay to end relationships if you realize that they don't work for both of you, or if it's not a good match at that time in your life. So we don't need to like stay and force relationships and uh, and try to make it work if we see that it doesn't. Practice self-awareness, once again, comes with knowing your limits. Practice self-awareness also it relates to accountability. Take accountability for your own mistakes, but also for, again, if you're coming into a second or third relationship or friendship and you have a past, you've been hurt in the past, or you experienced certain things that you didn't like, or to the contrary you like, be aware of those things and be aware how they impacted you and what would you like to change. You can share that with your partners, with your friends. Like if you had a friendship or your friend always was demanding time from you, and you keep giving, and then you're not receiving anything in return, and realize that it was important to you, make that clear to your new friends. Say, no, I love friends, I love spending time with them, but I also have a life, I have school, so I might not be that available, or maybe we can come up with a schedule and try to kind of keep up with that schedule when it comes to meetings and spending time together. Turn to your Robert, just go really quickly back a
Yeah,
little bit.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Tune into your feelings. once again, it relates to know yourself very well, what makes you angry, what doesn't make you angry, how you control your emotions. And nowadays, there are studies and research that shows that practicing yoga, practicing mindfulness, practicing gratitude oftentimes grounds us with our emotions and helps us in a way be more calm, be more reflective, and not always reactive. Because as humans, we've been trained to like listen and react immediately, debate immediately, have immediately an answer. But sometimes it's just better to, okay, you share some information with me, let me reflect on it, and I'll come back and give you an answer. Give yourself permission, and what Gabrielle also put in the chat, be compassionate to yourself, right? Be compassionate with yourself. Give that compassion and love to yourself, and that will reflect in your relationship. Don't necessarily be harsh on you, right? Oftentimes, if in abusive relationship, what happens with, especially with emotional abuse, with minimizing, if your partners or even your friends calling you, or you're always this, or you're always that, or you're a weak person, and if they keep saying that to you, then you hearing that every time, you might start thinking, I am a weak person. I actually stood up to that situation, but I didn't do it. So they are right. I am a weak person, right? Psychologically, it starts affecting you, and you start questioning yourself. And I think being compassionate and giving yourself permission is one aspect to understand that in some situation will be the weakest person, in other situation will be the strongest, and there's nothing wrong. It very much depends on the context, very much depends how we felt. So it's nothing wrong to be this or that way, as long as it's healthy for ourselves and we're not harming others. So that's a little bit about how to, in a way, the criteria to keep in mind, or something that will guide you to build this healthy relationship.
Okay.
It's important to know who you are, not to be told by others. Yes, Veronica, thank you for sharing that. That comes also with life experience. That sometimes might come with people who observe you, and they can tell you, like, listen, we've been in a relationship or friendship for 2 years, and I've noticed you've been doing that. That's another way to learn about yourself. Be receptive to those kind of constructive feedbacks, right? If your partner has good intention and you can see that, and they tell you, you keep doing this, and we spoke about it, and you keep doing it, maybe you should think about it, maybe, and analyze. Have you done it like indeed for 5 times? If you realize that yes, that's going to happen for 5 times, maybe something for you to change, right? Don't be this defensive immediately. No, I never do this. I did it only 2 times, or I did it only 3 times, right? So that's how kind of I would encourage you to approach it. Okay, okay, cool. We still have some time. Thank you all for who just kind of joined us. We taking attendance, so make sure to fill it out. I'm going to share it in the chat. And now I'm happy to open kind of the conversation for all of us. Feel free to put your questions in the chat or open your mic, and we have another conversation for like maybe 5-6 minutes, and then we can officially close it if that's okay with the whole group. Questions? I know we kind of throw out this word gaslighting. Is everybody familiar with gaslighting? What is it? What it stands for? Maybe you can put thumbs up on your Zoom screen, or let me know in the chat. Because if fine if you don't know it, that would be even better, so we can like address it and discuss it, so we all know what we mean when we say gaslighting.